Welcome to the EAU podcast series, Women in Urology, Dare to Thrive. In this fifth episode, Role Models in Academic Urology, the Society of Women in Urologic Oncology Perspective. We are joined by Dr. Psutka and Sima Porten. Together, they will discuss the foundation and mission of the Society of Women in Urologic Oncology, the importance of representation, and how role models can inspire systemic change in academic medicine. Join us as we embark on this informative journey.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to have this conversation today. My name is Sima Porten. I'm a urologic oncologist at UCSF, and I will let my co-podcaster introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Psutka. I'm a urologic oncologist as well at the University of Washington, and really grateful to the EAU for sponsoring this conversation. I think this is a topic that both Dr. Porten and I are extremely passionate about and has been a big focus of both of our professional careers over the last many years. So we're excited to kind of launch into thinking a little bit about how to increase diversity and representation and support each other along the way and just make our field a better place for everyone.
Thanks so much for that, Sarah. I thought I would start out with reflecting a little on the early days when women comprised only about 2 to 3% of the Society of Urologic Oncology. This is a little bit US focused since both Dr. Psutka and I practice here in the US. And at that time, it was pretty apparent that there was a critical need for peer mentorship beyond typical academic guidance from the current amazing mentors that were present during that time. Dr. Psutka, do you want to talk a little bit about the evolution of the women in urologic oncology and how we went from informal gatherings to a recognized entity?
Absolutely. So this goes back to actually very shortly after both Sima and I had finished our training. And we, as young attendings within the Society of Urologic Oncology, sort of gathered informally and recognized among the few women that there were. And at that point, just to be totally clear, the membership of the SUO, only about 2 to 3% were female. And so when you looked around the room, there just wasn't a lot of representation. And I think specifically that kind of manifested itself in terms of representation at the podium. And it was something that was we acutely sort of recognized the need to form an organization where we could support one another. And, these things tend to grow organically. So a number of us, about 14 of us, recognized back in 2014 that we needed to support one another a little bit more officially. So we got together, and I think it was Jen Taylor and I went and grabbed bagels and we gathered for coffee one morning and just sat and had a sort of a formally informal gathering where we talked about some of the unique challenges that women in urologic oncology faced and the really sort of identifiable need to create opportunities for mentorship and support for one another, and also opportunities for growth within the organization, because the SUO was really all of our home. That was kind of our home base, the organization that we all felt most strongly committed to. But we really wanted to grow opportunities for other women as well. So what ended up happening was that each year, for a couple of years, we gathered informally, and it started with bagels and coffee and sort of grew into a lunch that was sponsored by all female faculty within the SUO, that any woman was invited to join: trainee, fellow, resident, women from industry, our surgeon scientists. And it became this really lovely gathering that also sparked a lot of potential research collaborations, sparked friendships, sparked mentorship partnerships. And, mentorship is kind of bi-directional. So I know that there were a lot of times where I made sort of connections that ended up being with sort of more senior women who I wouldn't have had the opportunity to speak with formally otherwise, and also met some really wonderful trainees who have now become very important mentees and now colleagues and friends. And after a couple of years of doing this, we established kind of a critical mass. We grew from sort of the 10s to 40s to 60s, and all of a sudden there was a substantial amount of momentum and also an increasingly vocalized need for formal recognition within the organization. So back in 2018, a number of us got together and wrote a formal letter of application to the board. And this was a group that included Jen Taylor, Armin Smith, Dr. Porten, Sima Porten, who's here with me today, Angie Smith, Katie Murray, Cheryl Lee, and Isla Skinner. We wrote a letter essentially enunciating the need for the SUO to acknowledge the relevance of developing what ends up being an employee resource group or a sort of a specialty interest group within the SUO, similar to the Young Urologic Association that had been created many years before. And specifically, in addition to asking for just recognition of the group as an entity, we specifically asked for some additional support, not only to sponsor these gatherings that were becoming really important sort of opportunities for mentorship and sponsorship and collaboration, but also to acknowledge and continue to create opportunities for women doing research to have their work highlighted and to also sponsor their opportunities to get to the SUO, to enter the organization and have recognition. So we asked, for example, for support for a travel scholarship for a female trainee who was presenting her research, and a research award for the top abstract. And then sort of letter that we had written, we received very substantial support from the board of directors, and specifically from Dr. Dan Lin and Mike Cookson. And we were able to pitch this idea to the board of directors meeting at that time, and there was unanimous support, which was really incredible. And what was great was that the board really got behind this idea and not only formally endorsed the Women of Urologic Oncology as a recognized entity within the SUO, but financially put some support behind it, which allowed us to continue to gather as a formal opportunity and event at the meeting, which was co-branded with the SUO. And so this then, the first official meeting was 2019. And it's just been really remarkable since then, because you can go back through the photographs and just see the really substantial increase in representation of women within our organization. And simultaneously, you see growth of female membership. So we've gone from 2 to 3% to now approaching 20% of the membership is female, and that's the sustained formal members of the Society of Urologic Oncology. We've seen an increase in female application and successful application in fellowships. So have gone again from 2 to 3% of all SUO fellows being women to now really actually approaching about 30 to 40%, which is exciting. And on top of that, we've seen increasing representation and highlighting of all of the amazing research and clinical work that our female members within the organization are contributing. And you see that in terms of the representation at the podium, the diverse opinions that are being supported and given an opportunity to be heard. And it really has been exciting. And so what the next step of all of that, in addition to formally having this group, was going from an ad hoc leadership program to developing an opportunity for advanced leadership opportunities within the SUO via the WUO. And so our sort of original steering committee, which had really just formed out of necessity, got together and we generated a charter. And the charter is based on that of the SUO. It is directly in alignment with the core principles and strategic goals of the SUO. And it was written to formalize the role of the WUO within the SUO, but to highlight the fact that the WUO exists to make the SUO stronger and better, and to offer increased opportunities for our membership to contribute to the SUO. It's not that we are two organizations, it's that the WUO is directly linked to the SUO with very aligned priorities.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, it's one of the things, and Sima and I have talked about this a ton. We've always tried to avoid, this is not an us against them or the need to kind of create a exclusionary organization where it's just for women. We actually have recently really tried to grow our meetings so that they become much more sort of allied meetings. And we love having both of us have benefited from the incredible sponsorship of our male mentors and male colleagues, the He for She movement that grew out of Michigan. And I think that it's never really been about that. It's really just been about creating more space for women to thrive. And so with the approval of the charter by the board of directors within the SUO, the other exciting opportunity that has come out of that is we developed a formalized sort of leadership structure that is a democratic election that any woman within the organization is eligible for. There is fellow representation as well as senior formal member representation. And so there's at this point an elected executive committee with terms of leadership, a chair-elect and a chair. And our first elected chair was Dr. Amy Luckenberg, with the chair-elect being Dr. Katie Murray. And the nice thing about that is not only does this sort of leadership structure, give really strong, wonderful leaders within our organization opportunities to lead and have that kind of visibility and to affect positive change. But it also creates opportunities for evolution of leadership and to really sponsor sort of our younger and junior colleagues and give them seats at the table and the opportunity to affect change within the organization. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think it's a story that we're all really proud of. It's something that we all worked on really hard together. And we also, none of this would have been possible without the support of the SUO board, who was incredibly, incredibly committed to this effort at really growing the organization. Sima, you're on the board now, so you can talk to the strategic goals of the organization, but they've really integrated sort of this prioritization of representation into the strategic plan for the organization, which I think is incredibly exciting and also inspiring.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you look at where we kind of started in 2014 to 10 years later in 2024, I think there were over 100 folks at our reception that were women in urologic oncology across the spectrum, right? Scientists, trainees, now full faculty attendings, both in academic and private practice. And in addition to those 100 folks, there were many who attended as key supporters. So I think that's the other part of it, is this kind of inclusive community that really seeks to forward the mission of the SUO. And you see that in the current SUO meetings, in the board representation of the SUO. And because of this momentum, there's just more engagement in general. And I think that that's the other really important thing to highlight, is this is not a sort of side thing that's kind of growing alongside. It is indeed fully integrated into the Society of Urologic Oncology, into the mission of the organization, the board, as well as the strategic plan for continued growth. And I think that's the really key important part to recognize that kind of came from this journey. And you can just see how the growth and the impact overall for the SUO in general. And I think that part is very, very important. And I just kind of wanted to state that kind of part of our discussion, because I think sometimes it does get lost a bit at how important we think that's.
This has been a team effort from the get-go. And we actually, and I actually just pulled them up so we can look at them, that one of the first objective statement that we wrote was, a core objective of the WUO is to advance the recruitment, retention, and promotion of women in urologic oncology with the goal of fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion for the SUO overall. And specifically, we say the activities of the WUO shall be intimately coordinated with those of the SUO. So I think we tried to really take kind of a team-based approach. The SUO, like I said, it's all of our home. And I think we want home a little bit better and a little bit more welcoming to everybody. I think that's one of the reasons why this has been sort of successful, why we developed a lot of momentum, and also why it has been something that has now become sort of a formal, stable entity that is a really, I think, valued component of the SUO.
I completely agree. I think that aside from all the kind of benefits and momentum and impact that we have highlighted, there's also the other side effects that were amazing too, that came from formalizing an organization like this. Aside from professional development, I think a lot of the other positives that I've heard of this is just the ability to connect and make deep friendships that sustain us even in hard times in medicine, in hard times in personal lives. Having a space to talk about all kinds of things and discuss things freely, I think, has been an added benefit, in addition to professional development, which was part of the intent in the beginning. So I think that's the other sort of feedback we've gotten from multiple folks in terms of benefits of having a space like this that, does make our home more welcoming, right? Overall in general, but also creates opportunities for some of these informal things that is sometimes really difficult to characterize.
Yeah. I think that when you just look around the room and see, I think the excitement, especially, Sima, you and I have talked about this so often, but when we go to these receptions now and you see the number of trainees who are excited to be going into urologic oncology and see this is a viable career path that is not only viable, but like incredibly exciting, and where they recognize their power and their ability to contribute. We see all these incredible sort of burgeoning surgeon scientists and incredible clinicians, really thought leaders in clinical trials and everything else. It's just neat to feel that energy. And I think the whole organization benefits from it. But I couldn't agree more that the thing that, of course, I've directly just continually appreciated is now kind of have a pretty big team, pretty deep bench that I can kind of call on when we need to chat about challenging situations. And obviously our jobs are challenging. I think that's kind of part and parcel, the world of urologic oncology. We have hard but wonderful jobs. And so being able to think about how can we learn from one another, how can we support each other as we're all going through our career paths. It's formalized pathways for people to find a deeper team. But it's interesting now because I feel like we're on the cusp of sort of a new, sort of the next step. Our sort of original steering board, with which both Sima and I were part of, we have formally stepped back, and we have this wonderful new elected executive committee that is leading the charge. And they're actually doing things that are really super innovative to create opportunities and leadership training for the members of the WUO that is actually going to also benefit in directly and indirectly trainees and just the general members of the SUO. Sima, when you sort of think about like our future challenges, how do you kind of put it all together? Because it's definitely a different world now than it was 10 years ago. And I think that it's kind of neat that we can be a little bit more expansive, but we also have to be a little bit even more strategic.
I think that was one of the reasons that we did create a formal elected board structure and opportunity for younger members, right? Because it is much different 10 years down the road than from when we started. And this is where I think the fresh perspectives are really important, right? The steering committee, when we got together as a big team effort to create this, 10 years down the road, we may not be the people who are right to figure out what the future is. We can certainly think about and help with challenges, but when I see what the current board is doing with coaching, mentorship, leadership, creating speaking opportunities, creating opportunities on advisory boards, and those types of pushes that directly lead to leadership opportunities for clinical trials, for studies, for research. Wow, I didn't think of that. I wouldn't have imagined that future. And so I think that's the real key and important part, is making sure that we're continuing to keep that new energy, thought process, ideas going by including more people, even though it's a much different and challenging world, right? I think that actually is the future. It will sustain itself as long as we continue to push for fresh ideas, continue to make space for new ideas and new people. And so I think that is the real future, because I would say that I'm just continually impressed. Every time we make opportunity, you actually get your eyes open to something you never thought of. And so if I look to the future, I would say that really is it, because honestly, I don't know if I know.
Yeah. Well, and like necessity is the mother of invention. Like we all in the room when we were like, man, we need to create ways for us all to be together. And we did that. And it's amazing what it has grown to become. But I think, like, I also think about the opportunities to really start to partner with kind of women and people around the world. Like, you think about the opportunities that right now with the EAU, the WUO can partner with women in ISU and women in the EAU, the women of the European Society of Oncology and Urology. I think both of us have had the opportunity to speak in Australia, and have had the opportunity to speak to the Women's Association of Urology in Australia, and partnering within industry as well. I think there's a lot of opportunities to create these novel partnerships and really just to kind of grow connectivity. I feel so excited about totally what the executive board is doing right now. And I think that some of the initiatives they put forward are incredibly thoughtful about really giving opportunities for formalized training and coaching, basically creating opportunities to make that easier for other people to reach. Because a lot of us may not have funding for formal executive coaching or time for that. But if you can build it into these meetings where we're all there anyhow, and build those sort of opportunities, it really does benefit everyone. Because also, if you create stronger leaders, you're increasing the strength of the organization, you're increasing the productivity of those people. I think it's pretty neat. And also, just the different ways that we all reach one another, different sort of utilization of social media, abilities for outreach.
For
It's
sure.
pretty neat how it's kind of snowballing. When I think about the critical need, it's really to just keep infusing energy in it and to say, let's not stop. Let's not get stale. Let's just keep pushing, because obviously there's still a lot to do. And the world has everyone in the world right now, men and women, urologists, urologic oncologists, depending on where you live, there's very different challenges, but we all face challenges. So creating support structures where we can problem solve together in ways that are pretty innovative and fostering those conversations, I think can only benefit all of us.
I 100% agree. And I think that's a wonderful place to conclude. Let's not stop. Let's keep going. Let's keep building partnerships. And for those of you listening out there, if this speaks to you, please feel free to reach out to either of us, because we want to continue to find ways to keep the momentum moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this insightful episode. We are sure our listeners enjoyed it. To keep up with the latest EAU podcasts and stay informed on urological advancements, be sure to subscribe to our EAU podcast channel on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, keep learning and stay inspired.